Hey guys, it's Matt. Basically, the smartest people in the world comment here and they email me, and the best emails I save, put them in a special place. And if I haven't gotten to all the topics or ideas, they kind of build up. And that's the purpose of this presentation, to make sure that all of the incredible things that people have emailed me about or shared certain thoughts and ideas. And sometimes it's things that we know, but it's just put in such a perfect way. That's the first example here. Something we might know, but it's just said so perfectly that I wanted to, read the email to people, express it. We'll go through a lot of these. And again, they kind of build up, and there's no way, these insights and ideas and topics are too interesting not to get to. So I'm going to do that in this presentation. Now, if anybody's a college football fan, depending on when I release this video, the number one in the country, Georgia Bulldogs, are playing, I think it's Charleston Southern, the 4-5 Charleston Southern Buccaneers. That's like the Philadelphia Eagles playing against Oompa Loompas. So that's sometimes the high quality nature of college football that presents itself. You have basically a team that's as good as the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the equivalent of Oompa Loompas. So I hope this is a better choice for if you want to stick with me today. Number one came in recently. It's from Henry. It's a quick one. It's just said and put so well. Let's just start out with a quick one. Matt, as you know, the mathematical equations used to prove the heliocentric big blue marble spinning through the solar system as gospel stands juxtaposed to common sense, observable facts, intuition, etc. The point is, those same equations with impossible odds that fit together with every aspect of that model prove this reality is a simulation where if player ones, or ready player ones, are ready, they have free will and the ability to manifest the desired outcomes both individually and collectively in this game of life, dream, or Maya. Thank you, Henry. I think this relates back to my Goldilocks concept. You can't have science and the mathematics that backs up science saying one thing, and the science and the mathematics behind it is perfect. They can predict eclipses 300 years into the future. But then, as Henry points out, it goes against every bit of common sense, simple experiment, observation. Just this morning, I went out to Wawa to get a breakfast sandwich, like 6:15. Bright full moon, of course. I think the eclipse was yesterday. I didn't go out and watch in the middle of the night. I get late Thursday night, Friday morning. But every time I see a moon like that, every time the first thing I think of is how there's no possible way on a sphere the outer edges can be as bright as the center point, the point that's supposedly closest to you. And the luminosity or the brightness of the moon is consistent. And this is literally first grade. But if you present it to anybody you know, they'll think you're absolutely out of your mind. There's no possible way something 250,000 miles away can be just as bright on the edges as it is in the center. It's an impossibility on a sphere. That's literally what, there's a lot of other proof that it isn't what they say it is, and no buzzed cauldron was up there rummaging around the dust and the dirt looking for the six-pack that he dropped. There's a lot of other evidence, but you don't need any more, honestly. You honestly don't need any more. But people are so on the download and so programmed, once you start, messing with their worldview, they won't even let you even finish the sentence. So thank you, Henry. Next is an email from Sharon, and it's some sort of consciousness wheel with a variety of colors, and each area like a human progression through frequency, through brain waves, where it says the lowest delta brain waves, then theta, trance state, alpha brain waves, beta, and then gamma brain waves. It says transcendence. And I've asked her to clarify a few things on this, but it's worth talking about, absolutely, for a lot of different reasons. It says all souls return back to the black line. And on one side of the black line are the minions, the lowest level of brainwaves. And if you go, you have to progress around the wheel. On the other end, gamma brainwaves or a transcendence. And again, not sure everything of what this means, and I've asked her, but what I take away from it is it's one thing to talk the talk, like in many cases, I'm good at talking the talk, but do I carry myself for the rest of the day in the right frequency that reflects the talk or the presentation I gave? And in many cases, I fail miserably. So there's something that came up recently where I'll just be very brief. I talked to somebody recently about this story. I was very worried about something. If it didn't happen the way I wanted it to, the outcome really wasn't that bad, but I'm kind of paranoid about this issue. So I worried about it, and a series of weird events came through where the exact thing I didn't want to happen happened. And for that to happen the way it did, it's like 1 in 10,000. So I was talking to somebody about this, and I said the worry absolutely corresponded to the negative outcome that played out. Like, we talk about manifestations as being positive. Well, this was a negative manifestation. It's like I made that happen because I stressed about it for an entire day. And there's just no way it would have happened if I'm not going to get into what the details were. And again, overall, it's not a big deal. But I'm saying, we were talking, and she's like, yeah, you may have made that happen. Absolutely. But she said, there's also a positive way of looking at what happened, Matt. She said, potentially you're so worried about it because you're developing a bit of clairvoyance or psychic abilities, opening your third eye to a degree. You knew it would happen, so you were worried about it. That is a possibility. Although in this case, because this is a little like pet peeve issue of mine, and I get too concerned over this little petty stuff too often, that I think that I actually manifested the negative on myself. But bringing the chart back in, if I'm walking the walk in every aspect of my life, in addition to doing 5 things really well, making a presentation on the other 5 things that should be done, but then failing miserably, this would have never happened. So I like this chart about moving your whole sense of being through a higher level of frequency while you are in this life, a higher level of resonance. And many of us, including me, have a lot of work to do here. And the not-nilk matrix will always look for your weakness, that little hole in the Death Star that Luke shot his little torpedoes in that blew up the Death Star. Anybody think, well, why did they leave that hole open? Why didn't they just cover it up with 4 or 5 bags of cement? Why did they leave that hole open for Luke? Because there wouldn't have been a movie if the hole wasn't open, you jerk. Okay. But the hole open on the Death Star, we all have little bits are our spiritual armor. Our frequency is not perfect, and the not-nilk and this whole reality system will always try to find a way in. I mean, we have Thanksgiving coming up. There'll be some jerk relative or some jerk uncle at the table like, well, we have a resident conspiracy theorist at the table. Let's see what Matt thinks. Let's see what some jerk relative will try to poke and pry, get you engaged. See, back to the chart, if your frequency, if you've raised your entire resonance up, and I'm not talking about new age stuff where you'll just morph out of here into the 5D or 6D. If your entire sense of being is raising through these frequencies, then if Uncle Joe tries to get under your skin at Thanksgiving, it won't bother you at all. And it won't bother you without a sense of arrogance or pride. I'm getting lessons on there is pride. As we move through this process, we have to be careful not to become condescending, arrogant, and prideful. Not that, you're not going to engage with Uncle Joe at the Thanksgiving table. If a mouse popped out of the wall and started to call you conspiracy theorist, would you get upset at the mouse? No, it's so far below you, you wouldn't engage with it. But you wouldn't be looked down on it either. It's just these people have a lot of work to do. But this is, raising our entire frequency. I'm great in some areas and terrible in others. So if Uncle Joe engaged me, I'd probably be like, let's get into it, you sons of bitches. I would engage. I'm working on it. But that's what I like about this progressing your entire sense of being through the frequencies. And then at the end, I like the way it says here, all souls return back to this line. It might take a while. And I said, how many lifetimes does this take? I asked her, how many can you do this in one lifetime? I mentioned a few years ago, is that what happened to a lot of these ancient civilizations? Even the Mayans, those that built the Temple of the Sun and Moon in Mexico, those that were responsible for the Giza Plateau, other ancient civilizations. Who knows how long it took, but did they get themselves to a certain frequency where they basically just won and they potentially did morph out of here? I mean, that's the weirdest concept in the world. I guess I brought it up about 2 years ago in a presentation about presenting the weirdest concepts of all time. And that is much different from what I've been saying recently that, I'm tired of trying to figure out where the Great Pyramid came from. And potentially is part of the entire reality deception, no different than anything else. So it certainly could be that. But if there was a civilization there, and most people believe, even in this community, that there was a real civilization around all of these ancient megalithic sites, that, well, what are the chances they have no calling card? They left no trace of who they are other than the megalithic structure, and there's no record of them. They simply kind of morphed out of here. So I'll never completely take it off the table. Maybe they got themselves into a certain frequency where you could say they phased out of here. It's just there was nothing in common in terms of where they brought their sense of being and their resonance. There's nothing left in common with this low place. It's not hell like a lot of the truthers say. Go watch Aerial America, the series Aerial America, if you want to see true beauty. This is a place where heaven and hell mix, but maybe some of these ancient civilizations simply morphed out of here, or what was the word again? Phased out. It is possible. Maybe you just can't win until your entire sense of being is a certain frequency or resonance. This just came to me. I don't know why it came to me, but remember in Terminator 2 when the Terminator that's liquid, he was after John Connor and Schwarzenegger, and he just walks right through the bars, right through the prison bars to get to the other side, but he's holding a gun. And is this a truth drop? Maybe, but probably not. He's holding the gun, that does not pass through the bars, and it hits, and it startles the liquid Terminator. He looks back, and I guess he just moves the gun in a certain position and moves it through the bars. But maybe it's like that, to pass out of phase, to get out of this place, or whatever your belief set may be. Remember, he could not pass through the bars because he was holding the gun. Interesting, a tool of violence. It stopped him. If you've seen T2, the liquid metal Terminator can just pass right through bars and remold himself on the other side. So if there is something, that if part of us is not in the right resonance or frequency, that could hold back the whole. So as I'm going through this process a few days ago of worrying about this stupid little thing, it's just something that literally nobody else would worry about. We all have our little petty problems, and this is something I have to overcome. But I really should have said to myself, if I'm worrying about this, I am not in the right frequency to win in this life game. It's that simple. I either need to get over this and put every bit of myself into the right frequency or resonance, or plan on not winning. It could be that simple. Just to end this topic before going on to the next email, just a funny sidebar. Those movies, and I say movies because I've never experienced it myself, of course, never been on trial for murder, not that I know of, but in the movies where the defense team preps witnesses or they prep the defendant, like in A Few Good Men, Tom Cruise and Demi Moore prepped, Corporal Dawson and whatever the other guy's name, that Kevin's Bacon is going to throw this at you, Kevin's Bacon's going to throw that at you, and he's going to want to get you to this and that. And somebody should have actually prepped Colonel Jessup. I guess he's too prideful and arrogant. He didn't need prepping, and then it led to him being court-martialed and thrown in jail for 25 years. Somebody should have prepped Jessup. But we could do that, put a truth school together for ourselves and say, let's play out a mock situation as what's going to happen in Thanksgiving. And then this person here, Matt, will play the role in this classroom situation. Will play the role of your asshole cousin. And your asshole cousin says, hey, Matt, any fake shootings in the last week? How's the moon landing doing? Or we could do this to learn how to rise above it and to raise our frequency. So it's just water off a duck's back. And by my heel, I care not. Hey, Matt, did reality change today or this week, you Mandela affected freak? My cousins aren't that bad. I'm just making a point. We all have somebody that will poke, and we need to be prepared from a frequency perspective to deal with it. The next email is from Gerald, and it is a perfect amalgamation of genius and strange at the same time. I don't know how to interpret this, but it hit me. I'm like, there's something to this. I don't know what yet. We'll talk about it some other time, so I'm just going to present it. So it's a combination of where did these stars go when they supposedly die, but they didn't die? There's a little Mandela effect. Let me just present it. It says, okay, when these people die, like Mandela supposedly died, people believe he died. This is more of a Mandela effect thing. In this case, he used Yngwie Malmsteen, the guitarist Yngwie Malmsteen, popped up as alive when people believe Gene Wilder died several times, and he is dead now, but he had died, but then he was still alive. You've heard all of those stories related to the Mandela effect. Gerald says, this place, where do they go? He says, where do they go? This place here, where we are now. And other quantum realms, he says, is where they go. But where they go? Here. They come here. So it was like, wait, I thought they go away from here. Like, let's just read it. This place is the island that Yngwie Malmsteen was sent to, or Mandela was sent to, when people believed he had died, but then he was back for 15 years as the president of South Africa. This place is where they go after he was sacrificed, or they were sacrificed in another realm. His reward here. Bring him here, and then he continues his career. Bring him here, and Mandela has a successful career in politics until he dies in this realm, like a reward. This is the place they're sent to. It says his reward to live a longer life with his relatives. But some of us remember the other place and the other story. It says here, last line, the island that is featured in the TV show Lost is here, not out in the ocean somewhere. But this is the quantum nexus point. I don't know what to make of that, but there's some sort of genius buried in that I'm going to keep considering. This next one I saved from Cameron. I was talking about, a month ago, about the different levels of Hollywood humiliation, putting them in a dress, playing a certain type of role, mentally handicapped, or a homosexual role. And Cameron basically came out here in so many words and said, don't forget the big one, Matt. Now, who knows what type of the initiation this is or what it means? And again, we can't really predict all the creepiness behind it. But he said, you missed the big one, the taking of life in a movie. You've missed the big one, Matt. Name one major star. Now, again, I haven't thought about this at length, but he basically is like, name an A-list actor who in a movie hasn't taken life. Very interesting. Very interesting. Maybe there's a few. But the taking of life, and it's not, that sells tickets and everything, but there's something here, something to what he's presenting that I think was very interesting. Thanks, Cameron. There's an email here from Marty, I'll paraphrase, that talks about the ridiculous clown show, endless scandals it's evolved and devolved into every aspect of society, but he's particularly noticed it in sports. He says there's a drama everywhere. There's a player that won't take the V or cursing out the coach or causing some sort of hoopla on social media. It brings me back. Remember I told you I saw Jerry Maguire about a month ago. I hadn't seen it for, who knows, it was like 12, 14 years. It's been a long time. And I remember the one scene where his client is being, these charges about what this defensive tackle did to that young girl are unfounded. And Jerry Maguire is narrating over it, and he says something like, recently it's gotten worse. So it was almost like Jerry Maguire was like announcing that the clown show, endless scandals are now coming to sports, where they were you have receivers that just refuse to play and all this stupid scandal. And so we're going back and forth, Marty and I. But the one that's hitting now is what Simone Biles brought forth. And it's the weirdest thing, and it's completely part of the not milk, rigged up, cooked up reality. All of a sudden, this mental health thing hits. And Simone Biles, she couldn't flip in the air, and she's a hero for admitting her mental health issues. But then Marty's confirming, it's all over the place now. I even heard about this one. Lane Johnson, the 6'6", huge offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, he had to sit out several games for a mental health issue. And I think it even relates to that bum Ben Simmons. So it's, guys, it's amazing how this reality does business. Is it all faked and they're coached and they're all in on it? More and more I say no. Somehow the reality wants something, and these minions that are tuned exactly to the frequency, like, did anybody sit down and say, Lane Johnson, you're going to fake a mental health issue? I don't think it is faked. Somehow these minions carry out the wishes of the not milk. The wishes of the not milk is they want all these athletes to come to grip with their mental health issues and not they have to sit out 4 or 5 games, and this is going to be a big story. And somehow they just go through with it without being, in the old days, all we could say is somebody came forth from the Illuminati window and the men in black came and said, Lane Johnson, you're going to fake this. And it's all faked and it's all planned and everybody's in on it. And more we see, no, the reality wants something. And the hardcore minions that are tuned exactly frequency, just give it what it wants. So I really believe at this point, I don't know any about any particular issue. Maybe the Simone Biles was completely faked. It's not all or none. Maybe because of who she is and, the goat. And how many times did they say the goat around her? And there's something creepy every time they roll that out. But maybe she introduces into reality, said, Simone, once we fake this, then you'll see all these other athletes will have the same problem. And we don't even have to tell them what to do. They're just going to carry out our wishes. I do think it's more like that. It's not faked in every single sense. That's first grade truth. Here's one very similar from Manpreet about the controversy with Aaron Rodgers, who it came out, he's not officially Jabba-dabba-dude. Aaron Rodgers is not. And, Matt, he's one of us. See, I don't buy it. This is what I am pretty intransigent on this, and I don't buy it. When Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, so far under the dragon's wing, I'm sorry. I don't believe these people are just wanting to be like us and doing their own thing. It's part of the reality story. It's part of the script. They want roughly 20% in the United States to not consider the jabba-dabba-doo. They don't want it. They want the controversy. They want it. Aaron Rodgers isn't on our side. I mean, not that Manpreet said that at all. No, I'm just saying a lot of people would say that. It's all part of the script. And in order to understand the weird script this reality plays out, you have to be able to see around 2 corners at the same time. And it mentions here he couldn't play a game because it was CV protocols. He was out a game. And the theme that they're presenting now, and they're doing it through sports, is what happened. I'll be quick because I probably mentioned this. 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, the Cal Berkeley Bears against the USC Trojans, the first major college football game, canceled, where supposedly the week before, Cal couldn't play 20 of its starters or something. There were 20 players, had it, positive. But, then they had to send all these backups in. They lost the game. Then they had to cancel the game because there was like 10 or 15 more, approaching 40 people, 30-something at least. It was all over the place. I think one news story said 40 or more tested positive with just the one football team, the Cal Bears. And, of course, at the end it said, they're all asymptomatic. Yeah, so they're pushing – because they're pushing this theme big time through sports that, this person can't participate. But is anybody in bed sick? No? They're just, they're asymptomatic. So we knew illness to be something our entire lives. It was even presented by the media and the not milking TV, showing the NyQuil commercial shows somebody in bed, the sniffling, sneezing, coughing, achy stuff, had fever, so you could rest medicine. The person's in bed sick and there's snot and they look sick. But now, see, that's not necessary anymore. The new no puss, oh boy, it's still recording. The damn cat literally just jumped on my keyboard. And this has been happening all morning. I don't know what's going on here. I better get this done. It wants us to believe now that, millions can have it and be spreaders, and if they better not be around your grandmother. But it's just normal, Matt. And there's no symptoms. That's like a Mandela effect. See, in my old reality, like when you're sick, you were sick, right? Yeah, you kind of felt you were in bed or you felt bad. Now, no, Matt, that's not needed anymore. You can be very, very sick, but you'll show no symptoms. You can go out and even run a marathon. Who knows how they so successfully change the basic fundamentals of reality. And the next one, I'm going to read a sentence from what Toby sent me and talk very, very briefly about the movie 13 Sins. So Toby says, so we've all theorized on how it is that practically all public figures can be made to speak and act in ways that serve to further the goal of complete human subjugation. Subjugation, bringing the group under control. And 2 quick things here. One, I will talk about the movie he introduced me to, 13 Sins, that I thought was pretty interesting. I'll just do a minute or two on that if anybody's interested without giving away too much of the plot. But one thing I've always thought about regarding celebrity and those in the limelight is you'll never see them in any way participating with regular people in the types of things that we think are important. Will you ever see? It's amazing how none of them ever get out of line. Will any of them ever become enter our community and start talking about, now whenever they have somebody, they've brought people forth and they bring forth about splat turf. They have brought those forth, and that tells you a lot about what the system wants you to think about splat turf, whether it be Shaquille O'Neal or any of these stars saying the earth is this and the splat turf, then no way they're doing that on their own. They're all puppets that none of them ever get out of line. None of them will ever show up and comment under a truth video. It's amazing how controlled all of celebrity, and this includes sports athletes, they never engage with the public on anything unless it's in that not controlled environment. It is incredible. You think of all the movie stars, of all the rock singers, of all the, I have one story I can think of, one story for all athletes, all singers, all celebrity, all actors, going back to was it 1992, was it Barcelona Olympics? 92, the Dream Team, Charles Barkley was like, I'm not staying in this hotel. I'm just going to walk the streets. And there'd be like 50 people around him, and the Spanish and the tourists for the Olympics. And he just interacted up and down the streets. That's literally the last time I can even think of a celebrity or someone with celebrity status like a sports athlete doing anything at all normal. So how do they keep them all? You'll see a basketball player for the Philadelphia 76ers at a bar somewhere. I don't say they don't ever leave the house, but just going clearly over to the side and interacting with people in a human way. You might see them at a bar. They'll be with another player and an agent or something. They're completely unapproachable. I'm not talking about that. So it's fascinating how they keep all of the thousands and thousands of them, if you include all actors, all of them completely controlled. You'll never see them comment under my video. I don't think they should be commenting, but I'm saying they never do anything outside of their little boundaries and box, which is unnatural. It just is unnatural. So the movie 13 Sins, the basic concept is you can get most people to do anything that you want if you just start them along the dark path. Anybody, quote, normal. I think we're breaking free from that. This does not include our community. But it's the same story. The person highlighted in the movie 13 Sins is in financial difficulty, similar to the theme of Squid Game, and gets a phone call from this mysterious person speaking on the other end from the Chernobyl Control Center, the Illuminati window, saying, "Would you like to make $400 right now?" Person's like, "Who is this?" Just there's a fly in your car. Kill it, and you'll make $400 into your account right now. So I was like, okay, fine. He kills the fly. $400. He checks his bank account. $400. Boom, right in the bank account. So you know where this is going. The next one is a little bit, still easy. But then the next one is like, I don't know if this is the other movie, Cheap Thrills. They're very similar. Cheap Thrills wasn't nearly as good, in my opinion, as 13 Sins. They're basically the same concept. 13 Sins was much better. I didn't like the actors at all in Cheap Thrills. But then the third one for $5,000 is go run up to a child and make the child cry. So then, then he's like lurking around. I don't remember which movie it was, but then parents are like chasing after him. And then, of course, the point is if you walk away from this game, once you've entered the path of the game, you forfeit everything. And they're all in financial difficulty, and he's about to get married, so he needs the money. But what do you think? What do you think the last one's going to be? Probably. I don't even remember if I saw the ending. I think it's Take Life. Of course, something really, really heinous. The last one or two, and they start you out small. Just come into the Dragon's Wing just for 10 minutes. Have a cocktail under the Dragon's Wing. Oh, it's simple. It's easy. It's fun. Then you're once it's just showing. Once you get too far under the wing or too far down the game, there's no way out. because even in making the child cry, then they've pressed charges, and then the only way out, they've also promised all your illegal activities you needed to do to get through the game, we'll make that go away. And the person on the other end of the phone is so all-knowing, believable, like they're coming from the Illuminati window Chernobyl control center, that the person believes they will make all these charges go away. So I have to continue with the game, or I'll lose all the money. And then once you get the point is, once you get somebody just far enough under the dragon's wing, you've got them. You've got them. Unless they're the strongest of people. And I guess those types of people wouldn't enter the dragon's wing in the first place, like we wouldn't. If somebody shows up at my door, here's $1 billion. Will you take it, Matt? No, I won't. Take someone offer you $1 billion, no questions asked, you wouldn't take it? No. No way would I take it, because it's not possible. No strings attached. See, that's the point. So 13 Sins, pretty interesting. Did not like cheap thrills. The next one is from Lawrence W. Lawrence, and we've agreed on many things over the years. We disagree on many things as well, but there is no bigger thinker than Lawrence, and this could explode your brain. So be ready for this presentation, this email. But there is no bigger thinker than Lawrence that I've come across. He says, "We are here because we became addicted." There's also some similarities in what Tony has presented to me, but let me just read it. "We're here because we became addicted to this virtual reality game of good and evil. When we first started playing the game, we knew who we were, and we knew where we came from. We could exit the game at any time. We were warned that the game was dangerous, and we were asked to stop playing. We rebelled." This is an interesting theme. We've heard that before. "We rebelled and continued to play. The game was then modified whereby we had a memory wipe, so we didn't know it was a game anymore. To us, it was real, and getting out then became extremely difficult after the memory wipe. As with any game, you gain points and lose points. To gain points, you had to produce fruits of the spirit. You might call them soul tokens. The avatar computer body is programmed to lose you points via the 7 deadly sins, and these are the attachments that keep us trapped here. If you love this world or want to save it, you're a prime candidate to play the game again. When you have enough soul tokens and you've broken your attachments, then you get to go home." We're just skipping a bit. We are now on the 12th sequential life, the 12th sequential life. Remember in old VCR tapes, he says, when the tape ends without you hitting it, it just will rewind back to the beginning. If you've not amassed enough what I've called soul tokens, then this life ends, you leave the game, but then you go back and do it all over again. You go back to level 1 and relive the same lives. Go back what we would consider the Dark Ages or the 10th century or something like that. So this is basically, Tony's probably upset at me because there's also major differences in what Lawrence and Tony's presented here. Some similarities, but actually some major differences as well. Tony and many of the no consequences people are totally against the gaining points or the soul token concept, or giving away soul tokens or gaining them, or karma. This is just the same as karma. Tony and many of the no consequence people are completely against karma, and they would say the notion of needing to gain points, or if you don't get enough points, that's the same as saying carrying negative karma or not getting rid of your karma. This is all part of the trap to keep you, or to keep your higher self, keep reincarnating or incarnating certain types of incarnations from higher self into this game. You have to be able to see through it and say, this is what they present. I'm not taking any position here one way or another. He would say, you need to see that karma, you didn't do good enough. You got to come back. Your higher self can't leave this game. You got to take care of this. You got to fix that. Oh, karma. Oh yeah, it's this huge weight that I can't get rid of, and I didn't do good. So it's like, no, that's part of the false presentation, according to Tony and some people, as to getting you to believe that. And if you believe you just didn't do good enough, well, you manifest what you believe. And you ain't getting out. So very interesting either way. Thank you to Lawrence for all the interesting stuff he sent over time. Here's a very short but interesting email I saved from Jared about the little background on it. The reason for the V, potentially, from the perspective of the not nilk reality, reason for V, disagrees with the whole, Deagle.com population thing, culling of the herd. They didn't have to wait and do all this stuff. They could have, populations could have been culled a long time ago. But he says it is possible that it has to do with suppression. And I think here he's referring to suppression. The V is a setback potentially on the suppression of abilities that all five-finger beings should have. I'm not using the word human being anymore if I can help it. It's an Native American term, a five-fingered being. We've been suppressed. Our pineal gland has been calcified. The fluoride in the water, our psychic abilities or clairvoyance. I mean, of course we've been suppressed. There's been huge governors placed on what the five-finger being potentially could be in this place. So Jared's saying it could probably is likely also a suppression tool. Now, if you're working at your hospital system, and there's many people listening to this that are, and they've gone through everything, well, yeah, according to Jared, it's a suppression tool. You might have to work harder to overcome the suppression tool, keeping on along the line of thinking that Jared's presenting here. Okay? Now it says, that is suppressing some potential spiritual manifestation into this world, which would be of great detriment to their cause. Okay? It seems, so it would suppress, he says, some potential spiritual manifestation into this world, which would be of great detriment to their cause. And this does seem like a time where the waters have, quote, parted, and knowledge is just flooding into us. And why would we assume that we in this community are the only ones who can receive this knowledge? Maybe much of this knowledge would have gone to the masses to some degree, a potential wake up. Who knows? But this is an additional tool of suppression. At the end here, he says, I think the reason we may exist here, and the true goal, is to have the epiphany that this place is an illusion, and to break through the illusory reality. This is a seismic change for most. A paradoxical parallel idea would be, how many layers deep is the illusion? Well, absolutely. That's what I'm going to talk about a lot in the future. So he says again, one of the main reasons for existence for us now, and the true final goal, is just to have an epiphany that this place is an illusion, and to just simply break through the illusion, which is basically where most of us are right now. Then you say, well, then how many layers deep is it? The movie Inception, where it gets into things that I'm starting to talked about recently, where the dream state shows you you can experience two states in the same reality. The dream state shows you that it could be a fractal, an Inception type scenario where you die, that's not a word we want to use either. You metamorphosize into another reality at what this reality calls death. And then, why we're going to look back at this life and see this as a dream, just as we see the dream to the waking world here. Death will probably look back and we'll say, oh, that's what it was. Oh, it makes perfect sense. That life on earth, that's what it was. You say, oh, it was just a dream. Well, then let's not be overconfident that what we've gone into after what this world calls death, maybe don't be so overconfident that that's the final. Say, well, I just witnessed that life, and I remember when I was in that earthly place, there was something called a dream, and when I was in that, I thought it was real. So now that I've died from the earthly experience, am I sure this is the final, or am I still embedded inside a fractal? So at least if you're aware of that, it might not be the final, as pleasant as it seems. And there's a lot more work to do, or a lot more levels that we have to get through. There's something very important to keep on the table. The next one is from Stu, and there's one sentence in the short email that I'm going to read that is, it could be the most important sentence or the best way of saying it in our entire pursuit of truth that we've done over the last 10 years. This one sentence puts it better than anything I've ever heard. Here we go. It's embedded in the middle, and we'll return to it. Recent presentation, Matt, regarding Truman Show versus Matrix. I've become increasingly convinced that we live in a dream, a Maya. This is why the deeper we go into these conspiracies, the farther away from truth we get. This idea is difficult to put into words, but the experience is undeniable. These reality breakdowns that you talk about seem to be evidence that there's nothing solid behind the curtain. Once we become lucid, the entire world gets very small. And going back to that sentence, this is why the deeper we go into these so-called conspiracies, the farther away from truth we get. No doubt about it, couldn't be said any better. This is some sort of reality generation machine that artificially generates conspiracy. If you latch on to any one of them and you become completely entrenched and engrossed in it, you are giving it exactly what it wants. It is part of the general and overall reality distraction. You have, instead of climbing up the rope to ring the bell, you have jumped off into the bog. This is the same as saying when you jump off the rope, off to the right into the bog, the farther you get into these conspiracies, the farther you are away from real truth, wading out into the bog. But this is said a little bit differently than my climb the rope, ring the bell example. And thank you for Stu for putting it so perfectly. The next one you can't see, but Big Marty, sent me two pictures side by side. One is very serious and distinguished president of the United States that we all should very much honor, Joe Biden. And then he's put a picture underneath or next to it of John McEnroe in the same squint. Is it, Matt, they're playing the same role? No, I don't buy that stuff in the truth community. I'm not giving any opinion on this. It's just funny. And could John McEnroe be the son of Joe Biden? Hey, look, it's just funny. It's the same type of face, the same squint. No, I don't believe these truth videos where, don't you know, Matt, the guy that plays Bruce Springsteen also plays this role over here in politics. For the most part, is there anything that's part of the reality distraction we just talked about? You know, the reality distraction that we just talked about? Could there be anything bigger than that? Or when you say, look at this old tintype, Matt, from the Civil War, that's Keanu Reeves. Look at, that's bullshit. That's all implanted so the truthers will run with it. Of course, this is just funny. It's just the same as when you see the kid from Deliverance and then you see Joe Biden. It's funny too. In this next email, Scott has found yet another predictive element embedded in different TV shows and media presentations predicting 2001, a 7/11 Space Odyssey. So how many guys do we have to see? Do we have to get what we called first grade predictive programming in truth 6 or 7 years ago? How many do we need to see where we come to the conclusion, and I'm not talking to most of you, we've all moved past this, but how many do we need to see where it's not just men and women in secret societies calling the directors of TV shows saying, put this in there? Retrocausality. There are other ways reality sees to it that these predictive elements are in there. So look, we're all on this, the old guard here, we're all on the same page. There's not people running around making phone calls, but whenever there's one more example, we're going to highlight it and present it just to further reinforce our position on this. So let me read Scott's email. So it says, decided to watch an old series on the BBC. The first episode is called The Trigger Effect. Starts off with the narrator going into one of the World Trade Centers, taking an elevator to the top. The episode opens with them talking about a massive East Coast power outage of 11/9/1965. I guess it was real, but on 11/9, of course, 1965, East Coast power outage. It says, of the 4 different stories they highlight from that night, one was of the Scandinavian Flight 911, which was just about to land at Kennedy Airport in New York when everything went dark. The pilot quickly, for the power outage, the pilot quickly found himself past the airport and 2,000 feet off the ground, heading straight towards downtown Manhattan, and took evasive action and swerved away. I'm not going to try to convince anybody anymore. If you've been doing this for over 10 years, There's no way people running around with cell phones coordinated all of this. Time works in both directions. Retrocausalities are real. Mandela-affected people don't need to be convinced of this. It goes out in the future, the effects of what happened in the now. But if the effect is big enough, or there's enough human consciousness or five-fingered being consciousness focusing on the event, it can also affect what you call the past, because they both happen simultaneously in the same field. It's just a perception of where the needle's put down on the record, which is five-fingered being consciousness, makes it seem like it's going in one direction when it's not. I mean, we've been through this. There's just too many examples at this point. And these examples are starting. There's still not as many examples for the C thing that we're going through now, but maybe there will be. And I guarantee they'll probably keep coming out of the woodwork. What we have regarding 2001, a 7/11 Odyssey is off the charts in terms of predictive elements. Do we have 500 things at this point? I would say we have 500 things. Of course, all coordinated by men and women in secret societies. This one from Brian is very interesting. Goes back to a conversation we had per a Danny Minley video about they don't need money. They need money that came off the back of your labor, that came through sweat equity. And then that money provides energy per those spells and runes on the back of a dollar bill. You know, if they create $1 trillion, that doesn't do them any good. It can keep the town of Scranton, Pennsylvania, or Chicago from going under. You keep hearing these stories about these same towns are in the red year after year after year, but nothing ever truly goes under. There's always going to be unlimited money they can create to bail out these towns and jurisdictions, but that doesn't do anything for them. They need the guy to go work 35 years in construction and have that tax money that's on the back of sweat equity and sweat labors. Then that's the money they really can suck the energy out of. So what Brian's saying here is, yeah, that's very valuable to the system, but don't forget there's other ways potentially they can extract energy. He says potentially equally as valuable is the money they create out of nothing, but then they give it to the talented people. This is like a money energy laundering system. They give it. Maybe that's why these sports salaries just go up to ridiculous amounts. He said they make the money out of nothing, but they give it to talented people. It says the money that ends up turning true talent into a material commodity. They're both kind of inversions of each other, the yin and the yang. But I think the screen gets an equal amount of energy from the fake money given to get talented people to sell out themselves to the, using what their true talents are. They sell out to the system. So this is very interesting, and it potentially explains why, Mike Trout, who can get, out of every 20 at bats, he might get one more base hit than somebody else, but he's pushing $500 million or something in his total salary. Why complete bums like Ben Simmons can make $145, $150 million playing basketball, and they can't even make a foul shot or free throw. It's like, well, okay, they can create anything they want. They can create $1 trillion a minute on their Whopper Fed supercomputers and their ECB supercomputers. And back in Japan, they're all tied together under the same Whopper system. But then you give it. That's why they have to give ridiculous amounts to these. All celebrity now makes ridiculous amounts. Bums, complete bums like Adam Sandler, probably still make $25 million a movie. So to see where I would disagree with Brian is they don't get the same energy out of it. If somebody works construction and pays taxes and they just went out and slaved away inside the system, I think that carries probably for them the most loose energy. But it's, they get nothing out of just printing on a supercomputer. It's like, oh, let's give it to Ben Simmons, but he can't even shoot a foul shot. Give him $150 million. Then he can find a way at least to filter that money out into the system, buy his Bentleys or whatever, where at least they're getting some energy out of it. I think if they just print off, Chicago's $500 billion in the hole, they just print, obviously not print. They go to their Whopper supercomputer and just send $500 billion so Chicago can pay its long-term debts. That doesn't help them. So this could be one of the reasons for the inflation of money made through sports figures and celebrity. So thanks, Brian. Pretty interesting. This next one, I'll just say from Dave. He has a nickname that starts with L, and he's created some very interesting graphics about the minions he says I could use, but I want to totally protect his identity. He could be found easily through his nickname, so I'm just going to call him Dave. Talks about, this is in general about junk DNA. He says, Craig Ventnor, the guy who mapped DNA, found there was a fairly large percentage of it was called junk. We've all heard of this. I'm sure we've come across this term many times, junk DNA. He says here, it's not junk, or I don't think it's junk. I think it's a sort of interdimensional Norton or McAfee firewall. I used to work in a coding environment, and one of the better programmers used to regularly give us a block of code that literally looked like you just sat and randomly smashed keys and just all random junk like matrix code, and what you were left with was an undecipherable gibberish, just a mess. Okay, that was part of supposedly real code. So then Dave learned of this billionaire, Craig Ventnor, having mapped out DNA and finding something like 14% was this undecipherable junk DNA. Now, obviously, we know it's not junk. I think the creeps know what it is. I think they found ways to use it for their own means. It's just the notion to the masses is it's junk DNA and we don't understand it. So Dave says that perked my interest. You see, the code that he was given in his job that looked like gibberish, included a backdoor and a security feature the CTO would put into pretty much everything. I guess the lead coder would put into everything, a security feature or a backdoor, like Joshua was a backdoor in war games into the whole system, into the Whopper. Okay, he goes on to say the head coder would tell him and the other coders that stuff that looks like gibberish, don't touch it, no matter what, don't touch it. So it's like, well, these other coders don't even understand it, but the lead guy understands. And it literally says it looks like gibberish. So he's relating that to junk DNA. He's saying, always found the term junk DNA coined by Ventnor, that aspect of what this junk is, curious. It potentially could be a way of something outside of us or outside the realm or whatever to look in through a back door without us even realizing it, or for control, or what I'm adding to his email, for whatever it may be. He's just thinking big as to what this junk DNA really is, relating it to a back door in a computer program in some way, where, yeah, they'll just tell the regular five-finger being it's junk, but we know exactly what it is, and we're using it, or we're using it to peer into them. And there's a lot of possibilities here, and we, in this community, need to look into this and come up with a little better consensus as to why they're calling all this DNA junk, and what it really is. He says someday we could figure out what this code really does. Is that the governor that's, I'm just saying this now, is that the governor or limitations placed on five-finger beings to suppress their abilities? And just to finish the email, talks about a friend that had put a really bizarre story that came from a friend, said he'd seen something once in a supermarket where the head of a lady in a supermarket appeared gray and not human. That's how he described it. He said it appeared to know the person watching had noticed her, just like I'm saying out of They Live, and and then the episode ended when the thing out of the movie They Live appeared to be noticed. Remember, in They Live, that one can see. Look, at this point, guys, whether we agree or disagree, any exercise in big thinking is useful, and I'm sure the old guard like me doesn't take anything off the table at this point. Thank you, Dave. Next one is from Christian. I can't show it to you. I'll just mention it briefly. It's something I've saved for a long time, I think since almost the late summer. There is a Lancaster County, which is the next county over from me in Pennsylvania. The movie Witness, very good movie with Harrison Ford. The portrayal of the Amish in Witness is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. They are all Stoltzfuses and Laps. It's called The Travel Guide to Lancaster County. And in the YouTube video, there's the Sight and Sound Theater. And in front of the Sight and Sound Theater, there's a big statue, or I guess it's a mold in concrete, of the lion with the lamb. and it's the lion will lay with the lamb. The lion and the lamb outside the Lancaster Sight and Sound Theater, so that now we're up to 1,000 artistic portrayals of the lion laying with the lamb when the lion never laid with the lamb. The wolf lays with the lamb. Is it Isaiah 11:6? It's a Mandela effect issue, of course. No doubt about it. So to the Mandela effect haters, or whatever, the triggered, a special note to the triggered, let me take and caress your hand. I'm caressing your hand right now. Put your hand out. I'm metaphorically caressing your hand. There's 1,000 examples just of the lion and the lamb, not the other residuals of people posing in front of the thinker with their fist to their forehead when the literally the Rodin statue is right behind the person posing and the fist is to the chin. The person right in front of the Rodin statue cannot get the pose right. The lion and the lamb is all over the place, paintings, sculptures. I've had people show me pictures of mini sculptures, gifts they were presented. And then actually it says on the mini sculpture, the one I'm thinking of, it says Isaiah 11:6 underneath, the lion shall lay down with the lamb. And it says there's no lion in there anymore. So 1,000 people all got it wrong in all the time, money, and effort they put into their artwork. Ridiculous. I mean, that by itself. One example, the lion and the lamb by itself proves the Mandela effect, but I'll move on because people are triggered. In September, I was going back and forth with Vincent. Remember the Spike Lee series that was the first episode? I don't think it's on HBO. I couldn't stomach it, literally keep food in my stomach after the first. I stopped watching. The first one was about the V and its effect on New York, and he was going to transition that into some actually 2001, a 7/11 Odyssey conspiracy was going to be in the fourth. So Vincent says, I'll just pick it up here. This was a scripted play to send the message that, yes, it's been 20 years since 2001, a 7/11 Odyssey event, but the, quote, conspiracy theory regarding that event is still off limits. The Spike Lee story was, he was forced to remove that. He was going to talk about the conspiracy in the fourth installment or whatever he was presenting about New York. Or I forget what the series was called. I don't care. I try to keep Spike Lee out of my mind as much as I humanly possibly can, as much as a five-fingered being can. But then he had to remove it, Matt, or HBO wouldn't show it. Of course, all part of the script. He says they were never going to air the material. No doubt about it. It's all a script. And then he says, here, they probably never even filmed it. I love it. They just put it out that it was in there. He didn't go through all that. It wasn't even filmed. It was just people told this was going to be an episode 4. And the episode was scheduled, Vincent says here, for you. I'll give you 3 guesses to guess the date, but you're only going to need one. The 11th of that month itself. So he says, yeah, it's a Goldilocks again. Plays both sides. They want conspiracy theory there at the edge of public consciousness, but scorned. They want it there. People know about it. It's at the edge of public consciousness, but as long as they can get away with scorning it and pointing at people like me and people like you, that we are the boy who cried wolf. And they're continuing to get away with this because they have been one step ahead of at least the general community. So very interesting, and thank you, Vincent. Okay, next email is from Peter. If I've never read an email from Peter before, I apologize to everybody and to Peter because there's really some brilliant things he's presented me over the last 2 years or so. So here we go. Matt, I, like you, tend to think there's no such thing as space out there. I think the space they portray is actually a representation of the space inside of us. It probably represents mind, body, and soul. The movie Inner Space from the 80s was probably a truth drop in many ways. Pausing, but I went to look. I remember reading this email from him a while back and went to look at the movie Inner Space with Dennis Quaid or whatever. It looked so horrible that even if there was a truth drop in it, I couldn't watch it, but maybe somebody wants to watch Inner Space and send me an email. He says, I think the acting out of space exploration, the acting out of it in movies and endless TV shows, it's endless Netflix series, is a way for them to get us to manifest acceptance of foreign objects and exploration into our own inner space. Wow. It's the reason that the needle syringe, I don't even know, what can I say? The syringe was in it's the reason it was in the 1976 60-minute special from 1976 on the swine flu. And it looked, I think I presented it, it looked like a rocket ship, the syringe. And he says, it has everything to do with what's happening now. They inject us and we subconsciously manifest portals into those secret realms inside of us so they can hijack humanity and possibly even the human soul. Brings me back, as Matt talking over this email, brings me back to the strangers in Dark City. As they are different from us, perhaps they do incarnate over and over again into the snow globe. We're able to leave, eventually at least, because the soul can transcend the enclosed physical system. They are stuck. They are jealous, and they want what we have. Exactly the presentation of the strangers in Dark City. And I don't think Peter's stealing it from that. It just, Dark City is a gigantic truth drop. It could even be bigger than the Matrix. It says, so perhaps by believing they're exploring outer space, or getting all of us to believe they're exploring out there, we are unknowingly leaving the door unlocked to the collective inner space of humanity. And this is the foundation potentially for their great work, their great escape, like the movie The Great Escape, or exit plan. How many movies, this is Matt talking, the Britney Spears personality has left, this is Matt talking. How many movies are there about escape from Alcatraz? The Shawshank, escape. And many, like Shawshank, the positive messages for those who can notice. But then again, there's always sometimes the message is, the dark message is right alongside the spiritual or the positive message, or what Vanessa VA calls the retrocausality language. She presented a retrocausality example months ago, George Michael, father figure. And she presented as you could hear the spiritual message of higher self talking to an aspect of itself. I will be your father figure, blah, 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 blah. Now, I saw it that way. I could see why, I always liked the song. In high school, I liked George Michael, whatever. I could understand why she presented that. But somebody was like, wait a second, Matt. Somebody sent me an email, or it was in a comment. They were like, that's a pedo song. Put your tiny hand in mine. I will be your father figure. I was like, oh yeah, and then of course there's the one eye symbolism in the video with George Michael there's that and whatever. Again, even the one eye symbolism isn't necessarily bad. It could be like, well, this is the key to everything, and they have to contractually, like, they have to show us the eye on the back of the dollar bill. Is that the evil eye, or is that they have to put it on the bill and show us? Basically, that's the highest level of understanding of what we have to achieve, or opening the third eye, or whatever. The point is, whether you agree or disagree with any of my specifics, in many cases, the positive is right next to the negative. The evil and the good are right next to each other. In the movie Contact, you had the message from Adolf Hitler and the carrier wave. And then on top of that was the prime numbers, all right next to each other, the good next to the bad. It's all how you interpret it and use it for a good or bad, or use it spiritually or not. So I think both messages are there. And in many songs, there are multiple messages. So very interesting. And thank you, Peter. This next one is from Dylan, and people like Thor, who spend a lot of time investigating how to remove the shackles of the legal fiction or the straw man, and to fight it on its terms. We disagree a little bit there, but I appreciate their efforts and the time spent on that. They're really going to identify with this one from Dylan, because everything they do is like, in my opinion, is like the word trick or the word magic. And this, I doubt anybody's ever considered this. This is pretty amazing. And it's something somebody should look into, but I don't have the time. But you'll get the gist just from the short email. Okay, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, the first 10 are called the Bill of Rights. Then they continue upward. So Dylan's saying the 13th Amendment here abolished slavery. Continue to read. What's funny, the next amendment, the 14th, made everyone an equal citizen. So he says, my observation tells me that every citizen is a form of slave. They didn't abolish slavery. They expanded it to encompass everyone, be the 13th, supposedly, the abolition, the 14th, making everyone an equal citizen. Why are they back to back in the Constitution? They didn't abolish it. They brought the 13th, and they brought the group that was initially enslaved in the 13th into the 14th and expanded it. It says, I believe when the government titled us all citizens, from that point on, we're all slaves and property of the state. Okay, guys, to summarize this, who knows if this is correct? It would take a lot of looking into it and research. And I can just say one thing. One, it resonates with me. And anybody here that's not in the old guard, the old guard, it would all say the same thing here. Everything they do is word magic trickery. There is nothing that even as something as simple as the Second Amendment about the right to bear arms, how that's worded, everything is word trickery from the way they do business. There's no doubt about it. So just the thinking that this could be the case is thinking about the not-milk system correctly and how it does business. This next one is from Mark. It says, Matt, have you noticed people in general have new coping skills in our current environment? He is relating this potentially to the V as well. I'm extending it to, people shift along the reality, different frequencies. He's saying potentially because of the V, but I'm doing it more in general. Reality shifts, the river flows, the ship of fools sails, and people adjust and adapt to the new reality. I'm highly Mandela affected. I'll always see it that way. He's saying people have just new coping skills. That's why we have a harder time. We don't have time to get anything done. He's saying here, nothing radical, just like a new personality facet they have. If you imagine a multifaceted diamond having a new one added, maybe unnoticeable to any casual observer. A diamond that's cut in 20 places now has 21 cuts. Who's going to notice it? Just a slight change in the masses that we're not, this is what everybody on the ship of fools, I guess, is getting or adapting to, and we're standing on the shore. We're not. So Matt complains that nothing works, and I don't have time to do anything. So it's like they're adapting to reality, the people around us, as the reality changes and the river flows and the ship sails. So it says it hasn't taken over or dominated the stone. It's just one more facet cut into it. It just snuck in there next to the others. People appear slightly more positive and productive, but artificially so. Nothing over the top and totally obvious, just occasionally appearing when it influences reactions that used to be predictable in the person, he says. And he is relating this specifically. It could be the V helping people along with this sort of thing. But to me, I would see it more like that is possible, of course, but, the reality is very malleable, flexible, and shifts. And people that are tuned to its frequency will shift with it in the way that it wants. We are standing on the banks of the river, watching it sail away. So, I have noticed people still get their crap done. I said, well, how do people do it with 3 kids and a dog and this and that? And they have a way to get it done where we don't mix in this reality anymore. And it's becoming more foreign to us, and we are struggling to get it done. Thanks, Mark. Okay, we'll just close with this one. I don't know who sent me this email, but it was basically the Wikipedia entry for how Tajikistan is dealing with the crisis of C. And the basis of the email was just well put and things that we already know and sense, but the basis of the email was like, Matt, look at the level of detail that's in the Wikipedia for how Tajikistan is dealing with this. Every single bit of history, when the first cases were, what the president did, the relationship with China and getting aid. They know the number of cases per region in Tajikistan, the number of medical workers involved. There are like 40 what do you call the references at the bottom? I call it a bibliography. That's what we called it in Roberts Elementary School in 1976, a bibliography of references. 40-some references at the bottom where they know every aspect of how C is unfolding in Tajikistan. Tajikistan? It's just not possible. So the basis of the email is like, where'd all the data come from? who could possibly compile it? It's all bot driven. I mean, no human being. Who's the human being that, in this case, it is a human being, the derogatory term. It's not a five-finger being per the Native Americans. Who's the human being that's working on behalf of Wikipedia to compile every single detail and keep everything up to date on cases and what certain, the stance of the medical community inside of Tajikistan? I mean, the detail level there is absurd, honestly, because it's Tajikistan. And Matt, you don't realize, and that's just not like the Sahara Desert. There's 5 tumbleweeds blowing around. There's real cities there now, and it's come into the modern age. Okay, to a degree, it has. I mean, the Kazakhstan is not what Borat presented about his sister. You might number 3 prostitute, all Kazakhstan. I know they're coming around, but the level of detail, there's just no way. There's no way. So. And even if all of that happened, who could coordinate in Tajikistan collecting all the detail? It's just more evidence that it's not a human being. Well, no, it is a human being. Some derogatory term, maybe merge with the AI that's presenting these Wikipedia pages. But I don't know. It's just absurd. And you can do this for almost every single country. The Wikipedia has all the data on everything that's happening. I mean, at the very minimum, even if I'm totally wrong about this, and it is presenting real information that's really researched, then there's only a one world, then it proves my other points. Only a one world system could deliver this. If countries are operating on their own, not only would we never see the level of coordination we've seen across the board, there would never be the same level of coordination in the details reported on the specifics of how cases are unfolding and everything else. So anyway, thanks for listening, guys. It was always fun to go through the emails, and I appreciate, there's 20 other emails that I could have presented from brilliant people with brilliant ideas, and there's only so much I can get in, and some I've saved for the next edition of this. So thanks to everybody that sent me some ideas and emails, and if I didn't get to some of them, which I didn't, I will get to them next time. Thanks.